Welcome to our four-part series on researching your genealogy and celebrating Black History Month. My name is Phyllis Bridges, CEO of ULEAG's African American Art and Culture Movement. I will be your virtual host for today. This program is being presented to you by the High Point Museum, the High Point Library, and ULEAG's African American Art and Culture Movement. This program will explore various ways to research genealogy and give our guests tools to continue their journey beyond today's series. You will also hear amazing stories from the past from our presenters. At the end of the end of the presentation, we will open it up for Q&A. If you would like to ask a question, please post it in our chat room and it will be answered after the presentation. Our first presenter of our four-part series is Sara Blanchett, who is a graduate from UNC Charlotte with a Bachelor's of Arts in Africano Studies and a Master of Arts in History. Sara is returning to school this fall as a PhD student at UNC Greensboro in the Educational Leadership Cultural Foundations program. Sara has interned and worked in various locations in Virginia and North Carolina, and currently works for the City of High Point as a curator of education of the High Point Museum. Sara's presentation for today is titled Beginner's Luck. Sara, are you ready?
I am, and thank you for that introduction, Phyllis. I'm going to share my screen now. That is unfortunately disabled, but will be enabled in a second. I do want to preface that during my presentation, I am not speaking on behalf of all adopted children. This is my story, it is my journey, and I would like to take you all on said journey with me. And with that being said, let us begin. So during this presentation, when I say mom, I mean my adoptive mother, the one who raised me. And when I refer to my biological mom, I might say bio mom or bio fam, just for shortening that. But in the beginning, I've had a pretty blessed life. I was fortunate enough to be adopted into a very large family, a very large tight-knit family. And so we have done the typical family things, idyllic childhood with lots of celebrations, lots of great family time. I have great memories of parties and celebrations. Grew up with a lot of great friends. I have a lot of great friends, went to school, found a great career, got married, all you want in life. And throughout that time, I've always been told and I've always known that I'm adopted. And I have always thought being adopted was the coolest thing on the planet. I would bring out any documents that we have, like my certificate of adoption, and just look it over and see in black and white that it was official and I was part of the Blanchett family. I was that interesting kid who would go around and introduce myself. Hi, I'm Sara and I'm adopted, because I thought it was just that interesting. I wanted people to know that I was so wanted and so loved, that I was chosen out of millions of other kids, and that their family just had to deal with a genetic lottery with them. So it was something that I am proud of and that I've never been embarrassed of, but it's always been a part of who I am. Just like my brown skin and my brown eyes, it's a part of my identity. It's a part of being Sara Blanchett. And I've been fortunate enough to have an older brother who is also adopted. And so we are able to, and yes, he is that tall, and we are able to kind of be a support for each other. We can joke around about being adopted. We can have serious conversations about being adopted. And we never used it as a weapon against each other or used it as a weapon against our family, because why would we do that? They wanted us. They were so blessed to have us in their lives. So we have always been able to support each other. So on one hand, we have that total confidence and love and support. On the other hand, there is a sense of loss because we have something that other people take for granted. We don't have something that other people take for granted. We don't have that knowledge of what time we were born or how much we weighed or even our original names. We don't have that fortune of knowing that we got this medical issue from this parent or this grandparent. Our health records are a complete blank in the biological history. And people say I look exactly like my mom. And people say I look exactly like my grandmother. And when people would say that, we would just like give each other this look, laugh it off. And people who have known us for years and years tend to forget that we are not biologically related. My doctor tends to forget that I'm not biologically related. And so when it gets to that point in that conversation, so what is your what is your background? Do you have family history with this diagnosis? And I say, well, grandma had this and grandpa had this, but it doesn't really matter because I'm adopted. And so they just X out that section of my history, my medical history, because we don't know. So with that being said, what exactly do I know? Well, I know that my biological uncles are twins. So twins are at least run in my biological family. And according to my birth certificate, I know where I was born. I have the best adoption story. It's kind of what you want. The skies parted, the sun shone down. We saw each other across the room. Our eyes met and we knew that we were meant for each other. That's, the essential adoption story you want. And that's my adoption story, essentially. And because I've been raised to know that I'm adopted, I have extreme self-confidence in who I am, partly because of my family, but also because I know I have a strong support system. I know that my mother, throughout my life, has said, whenever you want to start that journey, I will go along with it with you, and I will help you in any way I can. And she said the same thing for my brother. I also know that my journey of self-discovery might end as soon as it starts. I might come across documentation that is so severely redacted, I don't know the answers to any of my questions. I know that it could be that people have passed, or they genuinely don't want to be associated or connected or start a dialogue. And so I pretty much know that this is actually going to be something that I'm going to have to keep at for a long time. And so my first attempt of self-discovery was actually with Ancestry. I made a profile March 16th, 2012. I'm in grad school at this time, and I figure, this is going to be a decent first step into figuring out who I am. That was something that kind of put a hard stop on research. Why? Because I only had information about my adopted family. I could only go so far as those members of the family who I was not biologically related to. So it stopped at about 8 people because my attention span kind of waned, my interest waned, because it had nothing to do with my biology. So I stopped all sense of curiosity and continued on with my studies in graduate school. And then once 2018 came around, by that time, DNA kits became more commercialized. It was not just used for finding out criminals in the criminal justice system. It became something that everyone could do to find their health and find their ancestry. And that was really intriguing. So I actually thought maybe, this is what I've been waiting for. And so I purchased a kit, took it at the end of March, because around that time I was diagnosed with something that required surgery. And I thought, well, I don't want anything else to come at me that's a surprise medically. So let me just go ahead and do this. And I took ancestry, took 23andMe to learn my ancestry, but also learn the health part of my biology. And I received my results in April. And when you receive your results, of course, you get notified via email, and you go in and you learn all sorts of weird and fun things, like the percentage of people with your genetic makeup who can smell asparagus in their urine, or who are more likely to have dimples or have a widow's peak. I found my ancestry to be 75% a West African and 20% to be European, based in Scotland, Ireland, and England. So those things were pretty cool. And then it notifies you, hey, you have DNA relatives. And I click on that, and, going into this thinking health first, ancestry next. And then if I find any relatives, that's just the icing on the cake. Well, it notified me I had a close DNA relative. It notified me that I had a half brother. Now, the amount of information I had, like I said, biological uncles are twins, and most likely I was, the runt of the litter. I was the last born. And so that I had other siblings out there. So I kind of already knew that bit of information. And knowing that, I immediately got a hit on a half brother. I thought, wow, this is the start. This is the ability to find out not only my biological surname, but this might be a direct connection to my biological mother, maybe a biological father, aunts, uncles. It just was so overwhelming that I had to kind of take a day or two to figure out, if not necessarily if, but when I was going to contact him, what I would say, and then wait for him to answer. Because obviously 23andMe, they notify you when you have a message or when you have more relatives, but you have to log on to your email to see that notification. And who knows when the next time he would actually do that. Luckily, though, within a day or two, he was able to find my message. And this is actually the message that I wrote him. I said, hello, according to my results, I may be your half sister. This is surreal and a little overwhelming because I'm adopted and know nothing about my biological family on either side. I'm not trying to cause any drama in anyone's life or anything. I originally did this to check out what health risks I need to watch out for. The biological family members would only be a side benefit. If you want to respond, that would be awesome. If not, I respect that and hope that in the future that may change. So just having that dialogue, letting him know that this wasn't necessary. It was neat to find out, but not necessarily a thing that I needed. And just like finding any other member of my biological family, I don't need it. I'm just naturally curious. I'm a researcher. I'm a historian. I like to find the answers to my questions. And so I never doubted Rob, who is my half brother, was who he was, because DNA doesn't lie. He responded, and we have been corresponding and communicating over 23andMe, over Facebook, via email. And like I said, there's no doubt we are related. He was born in late March in 82. I was born in late March in 83. So I assume these pictures were taken around the same time when we were in school. So he's on the left in first grade, and I'm on the right in kindergarten. You can definitely see that we are related to each other by our cheeks, the shape of our face, huge forehead, brown eyes. I mean, it's all there. And I've seen baby pictures of him and compared them to mine, and we look like twins. And so because we are actually about 11 months apart, we would be referred to as Irish twins, anyone related to each other who's been born 12 months or less. So I'd like to say, a twin brother out there. And so with this relationship, this new bit of information, what do I know now? Well, not much. Rob told me that he too is adopted. And so we found out that we have a lot of similarities in our adoption stories, that our relations is due to a biological mother, and we, because of our birth certificates, both born in the same city, same state, and we were most likely in the foster care system at the same time. So why weren't we adopted at the same time? Well, because we have different fathers. My biological last name was the same as my biological mother, whereas his was most likely after his biological father. And so, not connecting that, I was adopted out of Philadelphia and he was adopted within the state of New Jersey. And so, with that information, what is my next step? Well, after 2 years of communicating with Rob, I finally bite the bullet and decide to look at my unofficial birth certificate. The one I have has all of my current information on there, but I thought maybe there's an actual birth certificate out there with my original birth name and information. And so in 2020, I sent off an application April. I got that back in July. And the results were interesting. I finally learned the answers to all the questions that people kind of take for granted. I now know what time I was born, and I know what my weight was. And on the document, which I have redacted for safety, I have my birth name. I have the name of my birth mother. I have her address at that current time. And I know she was 25 when she had me. And so with this bit of information, I know what to look for now. I have an awareness of something. And what's interesting with these documents is that they explicitly say this is not official, use this for only information, don't use this for identification. And it's very telling with the language that they use. Before 1983, anyone who was born out of wedlock, on their documentation, it would say OW or out of wedlock, or it would just say bastard. Luckily, I was born in 1983, so I didn't have to worry about seeing any of that information on my original birth certificate. But having that awareness that even in the 80s, you know, it took that long for language to change. It took this long for people to be okay with having their information for future children to look them up. I'm lucky that my birth mother didn't have any official papers redacted, so that the door is open to kind of look for her, and I can build that relationship if I want. And I've always said to anyone who's asked that if I am able to contact her, I really don't need a relationship mother-daughter, because I already have an excellent relationship with my mother, and I don't need another mother. She's more than enough. What I would like to do is just give her a letter, or just to physically be in her presence to say thank you, because not knowing the circumstances in which I was put into the system, as a parent, you want the best for your child, and I've gotten the best. I had the best childhood, the best adulthood so far. I've had a blessed life. And so to thank her for being able to provide that for me in any way that she could. And so with that being said, what exactly are my next steps? Well, I can continue on the DNA route, if I would like. I've uploaded my DNA to something called GEDmatch. I don't actually know how to work GEDmatch, so that requires a little bit of study for me. In some ways, I feel like I haven't really started my genealogy story at all. I haven't really gone beyond a generation. I have gone parallel, I've gone lateral to find Rob, which is wonderful. But since he's adopted as well, he is in the same boat. But at least I have expanded my support network and have been able to connect with him on that. And we've been able to share information and discuss our thoughts and feelings about being adopted, and to just commiserate And I am now having to think about, well, I'm still dealing with the same roadblocks that I originally had. This is an emotional thing. Family is always an emotional topic. And with adopted children, especially, I've always thought that adopted kids fall in one of two sections. They are the ones who have identity issues and make it their whole world, and others who don't have identity issues and kind of go with the flow, but still want to know. But both are still connected because they're both under the umbrella of a sense of loss and a sense of questioning. And I've had to deal with, why didn't she want me? And why wasn't I enough? And all of those questions that only really she can answer. And I truly believe that it was just I was one too many. I was wanted, but she couldn't take care of me. And so she put me in the system, hoping for a better life for me, which I received. And then there's also the time and distance. I am in North Carolina. Everything that I would need to know and to research and find answers is Northeast, is in Philly, New York, New Jersey. So I am not hopping on a plane and going back and forth to those locations to find out this information about myself. That's a lot of time I would have to take out of work, that I would have to take out of school, take out of my personal life. And so with that being said, I would need a fair amount of money in order to do that research, to lay the groundwork, to do tax records, to maybe hire a PI, to, do the next steps, essentially. And that requires thought and discussion between myself, my spouse, my mom, to determine who will do what and who will help with what and how are we going to be doing this. And it requires a lot of planning for me. Will I continue? Of course. I'm curious. I need to know the answers, because once I know, I can move on to the next step. I have contacted other people on 23andMe just to say, hey, I realize we're related in some way. Do you know the person or the person with a surname? And so now it's more of a starting the legwork. It was really, as entitled, beginner's luck that I was able to find Rob, that I was able to have that initial close relative notification from 23andMe. And now I feel like, as I said, I'm really starting my genealogy journey to the next step. And other people who are doing their genealogy, they can just talk to the oldest person in their family to get the family stories, and then they can go from there. I don't have that luxury. Granted, I know all the Blanchett family stories, but for my biological family, I don't have that luxury. So what can I do but start bugging people on 23andMe, put my ancestry DNA in there using ancestry.com DNA kit, put it in there. Look at GEDmatch, which is the site that they use to find the Golden State Killer. That essentially is more technical, that again I have to research, but knowing that Rob could potentially find out his unofficial birth certificate and we can talk about that. And I do have someone in that area who can at least talk to me about what they've done, and I might be a little bit more invested than him just because I have that natural curiosity that will keep me going and going. I don't feel that he is that curious, but will most likely wait to see what I find out. I think I might be a little bit more tenacious than he is in that aspect. So that is my genealogy story. It really, in some ways, hasn't started at all, but I haven't really started, but in some ways I have. So it's kind of between a rock and a hard place, if you will. For a historian or a researcher, you really want to have forward momentum. And with genealogy, it's going to come up with a lot of roadblocks and a lot of ways of being patient. You know, I'm the most impatient person. So this will be interesting. And I am more than happy to share my story because, as I said, I love being adopted. I love talking about it, and I'm not ashamed of it. So I hope to continue this beginner's luck that I've had so far in the next step of my journey. Thank you all, and I will answer any questions that are out there. And of course, if there are any questions that people ask after the presentation, feel free to email me directly, and I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thanks, Sarah. That was great. I think so far we've got one question, but anyone feel free to add anything in. We have Gerard who said, first, God bless and thank you for sharing your story. Would you please share resources you'd recommend to help with the emotional aspect of going through this story?
Ooh, the emotional aspect. If you are currently in therapy, that is a good one. Honestly, I don't really have any emotional resources other than contacting a therapist. If there is, I do know that in the packet I received for my unofficial birth certificate, they had a flyer in there that for adopted children, that here are some resources if you need to talk to anyone. And it had a bunch of resources I can't remember at the time, but I think that was mainly for people in New Jersey, in that area. I would suggest any like Children's Aid Society. That's the organization I was adopted from. So any adoption agency would have a lot of resources. A therapist that you might currently be seeing, but also anyone who is specifically able to discuss adoption, and any social worker. Honestly, they would be able to be great resources to help out with the emotional part. And then most importantly, you have to talk to your family, your spouse, biological parents, brothers, sisters, anyone you feel comfortable who already knows your story or already is comfortable with the information. I've talked ad nauseum with my mother over the course of my life, but I know I can talk to her. I can talk to my wife about anything that's going on with me emotionally. And again, Rob, he's a great source to discuss things with. But if you're wanting like a professional, I would definitely seek out social workers, therapists, and any adoption agencies. They would be able to tell you any great resources.
That's great. And Phyllis asks, have you and Rob actually met face to face?
We have not met face to face. We, like I said, have talked through message on 23andMe, and that went to email, and now we talk on Facebook Messenger. We are both very busy people, and we are very similar in that he's a very creative person. So he is doing his thing up there, and we haven't actually discussed meeting in person. It may have been on the fly, and would love to meet you in person in the future. It's been 4 years already since we first started talking, so I think the next step would be to meet, and most likely that would be me going up to see him instead of him coming down. I'm also really down to have us meet at Disney World somewhere. I'm a big Disney person, and he's never been, so I'd be more than happy to show him around. But I feel like me going up there would be preferable, but that is in the works. We just haven't really discussed when that will happen. And with COVID going on, there's no sense of doing that right now. So maybe in a couple of years.
And Alfreda asked, have you tried to research your bio mother through public records at all?
I've done a cursory thing, but she has the most basic name. Like, think John Smith, like basic name. So even putting her name in, you get a lot of interesting random people. And looking even in the state, still a lot of interesting random people. So that requires really going through like tax records to see if I can follow her along those lines. I know roughly her age and how old she would be now. And like I said, I only have the mailing address when I was born. So that's really my starting point right now.
And it looks like our last question, Angela asked, have you and your brother talked about likes, dislikes, etc.?
In terms of
Yes,
generally in life?
Similarities, yeah.
Oh, not really. We've really discussed like hobbies, our careers, the way we grew up, the families. We both adopted into African American families. Siblings, you know, those kind of similarities. I can tell that we are both very dramatic people, creative, and both have good educations. He has a master's degree also. And, you know, those kind of likes. We haven't really gotten into politics, but I can kind of glean where he is on that, and we're similar in that way. But in terms of, you know, favorite color and favorite music, that kind of thing, we haven't played 20 questions yet.
All right. It looks like that was our last question.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, again, feel free to email me directly if you have any other questions. My email address is on the High Point Museum website. So it's sarah.blanchett@highpointnc.gov. For spelling, please look it up on the website. Sarah without an H, Blanchett without an E on the end. So I appreciate this. And our next in the series is next week. And Phyllis, you want to do a rundown of that?
Sure. But first, I would like to thank everyone for joining us this morning. And Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your story. I got a little teary-eyed here a couple of times, but it's just fascinating. And I do believe the answers that you will like to know, you will receive those. And again, just thank you for sharing and you know, providing resources. Thank everyone for coming out this morning, and please go online and register so you can join us next Saturday. We will have Angela Roach Robinson, who will do her presentation to share with us her journey and the resources that she has gone through to get some of her answers. It will be next Saturday, February 22nd. We will start at 11 a.m. And yeah, you can go online now and register. So thank you again. I hope to see everyone next Saturday.